November 2, 1944. The shores of Peleliu. Sergeant Takashi Nakamura pressed his back against the limestone cave wall, fingers shaking as he scrawled words that would mean his execution if discovered by his commanding officer. We have been deceived. The American Marines are not the weak-willed soldiers we were promised. They are devils who walk through our fire as if bullets cannot touch them. Today I watched a Marine shot 7 times continue advancing until he completed his mission. Only then did he fall. This is not human. This is something we cannot defeat. Through the narrow cave opening, Nakamura watched the black smoke rising from the ridges his regiment had defended for 6 weeks. The Umurbragal pocket, terrain so hostile the Americans called it Bloody Nose Ridge, had become a graveyard where Japanese courage met American industry. And courage alone was not enough. Imperial Japanese Army intelligence had promised garrison commanders across the Pacific that United States Marines were elite troops, yes, but still Americans. Products of a soft democratic society that valued individual comfort over collective sacrifice. Where Japanese soldiers embraced death as the ultimate honor, Americans supposedly feared it above all else. This assessment would prove catastrophically, fatally wrong. The first cracks appeared on a steaming August morning in 1942, when Marines came ashore at Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. Lieutenant Hideaki Saito commanded a reinforced platoon of 40 men, veterans of the China campaign where Japanese forces had seemed invincible against numerically superior enemies. His orders were simple: assess American capabilities, harass their positions, demonstrate Japanese control of the night. Sato's platoon moved through the jungle with practiced silence, approaching Marine defensive lines under cover of darkness. Japanese doctrine held that Americans, with their emphasis on comfort and safety, would be vulnerable to night infiltration. What Saito found instead would haunt him for the 3 weeks he survived before a Marine patrol killed him in a dawn firefight. His diary, recovered by intelligence officers, recorded the shock. The Americans were waiting. Not sleeping, not resting, but waiting in prepared positions with weapons aimed at approaches we considered hidden. When we probed their lines, they did not panic. They returned fire with discipline that would credit a regiment of our best troops. Most disturbing, they pursued us into the darkness as if they could see. We lost 12 men. I do not believe the Americans suffered any casualties. How can this be? These are the soldiers we were told fear darkness, who need electric lights and soft beds. I do not understand what we face. Sato's confusion was shared across Japanese commands throughout the Pacific. Every assumption drilled into officers during training was being contradicted by savage reality. Private First Class Takashi Nakamura, then a young rifleman on Guadalcanal, participated in a banzai charge against Marine positions on October 10. 200 Japanese soldiers fixed bayonets and charged across open ground toward Henderson Field, certain that American troops would break under the spiritual power of soldiers willing to die. The Marines mowed them down with interlocking machine gun fire and pre-registered mortar barrages. 130 Japanese soldiers died in less than 6 minutes. The Marines immediately counterattacked, pursuing survivors into the jungle. Nakamura survived by hiding in a drainage ditch for 8 hours while Marine patrols searched the area. His account, recorded years later, captured the psychological impact. I believed we were the warriors, that our willingness to embrace death made us superior. But the Marines did not fear our charge. They slaughtered us like farmers harvesting wheat, and then hunted us like animals. I realized that night that spiritual strength means nothing against industrial firepower combined with equal determination. The Marines were willing to die just as we were, but they would do it with artillery support and endless ammunition. This was not warfare as our instructors described. This was systematic annihilation. The pattern repeated across the Pacific with variations in terrain but identical outcomes. November 20, 1943. Tarawa Atoll. Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki commanded 4,500 elite Japanese naval infantry, dug into fortifications that had taken 18 months to construct. Concrete bunkers withstood naval bombardment. Artillery positions commanded every approach. Machine gun nests provided overlapping fields of fire across 500 meters of open beach. Shibasaki famously declared that 1,000,000 men could not take Tarawa in 100 years. The 2nd Marine Division proved him wrong in 76 hours. Private Yoshi Tanaka, one of 17 Japanese survivors, told interrogators what broke the impregnable fortress. The first waves of Marines died in the water. We killed hundreds. Their blood turned the lagoon red. We celebrated, certain we had stopped them. Then more landing craft appeared. We killed the second wave on the beach. More came. The third wave brought flamethrowers and tanks. They did not stop. We killed them, and they were replaced. We destroyed vehicles, and more arrived. This continued for 3 days. We fought until we had no ammunition, then fought with swords and bayonets. The Marines fought us hand to hand and won. Not because they were better warriors, but because for every Marine we killed, 3 more landed. Our reinforcements never came. Theirs never stopped. Tarawa taught Japanese commanders a brutal lesson that many refused to accept. The United States possessed industrial capacity and manpower reserves that made conventional defensive strategy meaningless. Every Marine killed or wounded was replaced within weeks. Every tank destroyed was replaced within days. Japanese losses were permanent and irreplaceable. The mathematics dictated defeat. Yet pride and propaganda prevented honest assessment. Sergeant Nakamura, transferred to Peleliu after recovering from wounds suffered on Guadalcanal, received intelligence briefings in July 1944 that still described American forces as reluctant warriors overly dependent on firepower because they lacked fighting spirit. The briefing officer, a staff captain who had never faced combat, assured the assembled sergeants that Marines could be defeated through aggressive tactics and acceptance of casualties. Nakamura raised his hand, a breach of protocol that earned him a reprimand. "Captain, respectfully, I have fought the Marines. They do not lack fighting spirit. They advance under fire that would stop any rational soldier. They attack at night as effectively as in daylight. They accept casualties without hesitation when the objective requires it. If we tell our soldiers that Marines are weak-spirited, we send them to die based on lies." The captain responded with standard propaganda. "Sergeant, you mistake material advantage for spiritual strength. Yes, the Americans have more equipment and supplies. But equipment does not win battles. The fighting spirit of the Japanese soldier, our willingness to die for the emperor, this is what will bring victory. You are dismissed." Nakamura wrote in his diary that night that Japan would lose the war because leadership refused to acknowledge reality. He was correct, but would not survive to see surrender. The Marines landed on Peleliu September 15. Nakamura's regiment defended the southern ridges where coral limestone formations created natural fortresses. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, garrison commander, had studied previous battles and designed a defense in depth that abandoned suicidal banzai charges in favor of attritional warfare. Every cave was fortified and connected by tunnels. Artillery was positioned for maximum coverage. Infantry would defend, fall back, and defend again from prepared positions. The goal was not to stop the Marines, which Nakagawa acknowledged was impossible, but to make them pay such a terrible price that future invasions might be reconsidered. The strategy worked better than any previous defensive plan. The 1st Marine Division, expecting to secure Peleliu in 4 days, instead fought for 30 days before being withdrawn with catastrophic casualties. The Yumurbergal pocket held out for another 40 days against the Army's 81st Infantry Division. Total American casualties exceeded 10,000. Japanese defenders fought with fanatical dedication, turning every cave into a killing ground. But the mathematics remained unchanged. Nakamura recorded the futility in his diary. "We have killed thousands of Americans. Our defenses have performed brilliantly. Colonel Nakagawa is a genius of defensive warfare. And yet we are losing. Every day more Americans land. Every night their supplies arrive. Every position we defend is eventually overrun because they have infinite patience and infinite resources. We can wound them terribly, but we cannot make them stop. Yesterday I watched Marines assault a cave position for 6 hours. They lost 30 men. They took the position. Today they attacked the next cave. They will take that one too. And the next. And the next. Until we are all dead. This is not defeat in battle. This is mathematical extinction. The breaking point came on November 24 when surviving Japanese forces, reduced to fewer than 300 men without food or ammunition, attempted a final breakout. Marines annihilated them with artillery and automatic weapons fire. Sergeant Nakamura died in that assault, bayoneting one Marine before being shot 11 times. His diary was recovered and translated, becoming one of thousands of documents that revealed how completely Japanese intelligence had misunderstood their enemy. The most comprehensive analysis came from General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, arguably Japan's most capable defensive commander. Assigned to defend Iwo Jima in June 1944, Kurabayashi spent 8 months studying marine tactics and preparing defenses specifically designed to inflict maximum casualties. Unlike other commanders who clung to propaganda, Kurabayashi accepted reality and planned accordingly. His orders to garrison troops were unprecedented in their honesty. We cannot win this battle. The Marines will land with overwhelming force and complete control of sea and air. They will have unlimited ammunition and supplies. They will attack until Iwo Jima falls. Our mission is to delay them as long as possible and kill as many as possible. Do not expect to survive. Do not expect reinforcements. Do not expect victory. Expect only death and the honor of serving the empire in its darkest hour. Kurabayashi banned banzai charges as wasteful. He created 11 miles of tunnels connecting 1,500 defensive positions. Every cave had multiple firing ports and connecting passages. Artillery was positioned to deliver devastating enfilade fire on landing beaches. The entire island became a fortress designed not to repel invasion but to maximize American casualties. Intelligence predicted the Marines would secure Iwo Jima in 5 days. February 19, 1945. D-Day on Iwo Jima. 70,000 Marines landed on beaches targeted by perfectly coordinated Japanese artillery. Naval bombardment barely scratched fortifications buried deep in volcanic rock. Marines of the 4th and 5th Divisions died in windows the moment landing ramps dropped. Black volcanic sand provided no cover. Japanese gunners had registered every meter of beach. The assault waves took horrific casualties within minutes. Kurabayashi's plan was working perfectly. And then the Marines did what Kurabayashi had hoped they would not. They advanced directly into the artillery fire. Finding gaps between positions, exploiting momentary advantages, calling in naval gunfire and airstrikes on bunkers, Marines pushed forward meter by bloody meter. When officers fell, sergeants took command. When sergeants fell, corporals led. When entire units were pinned down, other units flanked the positions holding them. The attack never stopped. Private First Class Hideo Watanabe, positioned in a bunker overlooking the beaches, recorded the incomprehension Japanese defenders felt. We killed so many Americans in the first hour that I believed we would throw them back into the sea. The beach was covered with bodies. And still they came. We destroyed one tank. Another appeared. We killed one flamethrower team. Another took their place. We shot a Marine officer organizing an assault. His radioman immediately assumed command and continued the attack. How do you stop an enemy that replaces casualties faster than you can inflict them? By afternoon, Marines were 300 meters inland despite our perfect defenses. By evening, they controlled a beachhead despite suffering thousands of casualties. I knew then that we would die, and our deaths would accomplish nothing except delaying defeat by days or weeks. Watanabe's prediction was accurate. The battle for Iwo Jima lasted 36 days. Japanese defenders fought with suicidal bravery, inflicting 26,000 casualties on Marine forces, including nearly 7,000 killed. Percentage-wise, Marines suffered their highest casualties of the Pacific War. Any other military force would have required months to recover. And yet, Marine operations never slowed. Fresh divisions reinforced damaged units. Casualties were evacuated and replaced. The offensive continued with relentless intensity until every Japanese defender was dead or captured. Only 1,006 Japanese soldiers survived, most because they were unconscious or too wounded to resist. General Kuribayashi himself died in a final attack in late March. His last message to Tokyo acknowledged what Japanese leadership refused to accept. "The Marines are the finest soldiers I have encountered. Their training creates warriors equal to our best. Their equipment is superior to ours by factors we cannot match. Their junior leaders make tactical decisions at speeds we cannot counter. And they never stop attacking regardless of cost. Japan cannot defeat such an enemy. We can only make them bleed and pray that our sacrifice purchases time for negotiations that might save something of our nation." Kuribayashi's assessment proved prophetic. The atomic bombs fell in August before any negotiated settlement could be reached. But his analysis of Marine capabilities was shared by every Japanese soldier who survived combat against them. Private Yoshi Tanaka, the Tarawa survivor, explained in a post-war interview what made Marines uniquely dangerous. American Army units fought professionally and effectively. But they were rational. They would attack, assess casualties, pull back to reorganize if necessary. Marines operated differently. They attacked and continued attacking regardless of losses. Not because they were stupid or didn't value their lives. Because they had been trained that surrender was worse than death, that retreat betrayed every Marine who came before them. This created a psychological advantage beyond their material superiority. We knew that Marines would keep coming no matter what we did. That knowledge was paralyzing. You can fight an enemy who might withdraw. You cannot defeat an enemy who will pay any price to win. This mindset was deliberately created through training that rivaled Japanese military indoctrination in intensity. Captured Marine training manuals revealed a process designed to break recruits mentally and physically, then rebuild them with identity inseparable from the Corps itself. Boot camp instructors used psychological abuse that would be illegal in civilian society. Recruits were told they were worthless, that they would never be Marines, that they should quit. Those who remained learned that surrender was not an option. The second phase rebuilt recruits into Marines who understood they represented every Marine who had ever served. Failure was not just personal dishonor, but betrayal of the brotherhood. This created fighters who would advance when rational calculation said to retreat. Japanese soldiers encountered this mentality in battles that should have succeeded but failed catastrophically. June 15, 1944. Saipan. As American positions began collapsing under pressure from a massive banzai charge, officers called for retreat to regroup. Marines instead counterattacked into the Japanese advance, fighting hand-to-hand with bayonets, knives, and fists. The banzai charge, which had broken Chinese armies, shattered against Marines who refused to break. 3,000 Japanese soldiers died. Marine casualties numbered 90 killed and 247 wounded. The disparity was not due to cowardice on the Japanese side. It resulted from combined arms coordination that Japanese forces could not match. While Japanese infantry charged with rifles and swords, Marines called in artillery, naval gunfire, and airstrikes that turned the assault into a slaughter. When Japanese soldiers closed to hand-to-hand range where their training should have prevailed, they found Marines equally skilled and supported by reserves, medical evacuation, and immediate resupply. Corporal Kenji Yoshida survived the Saipan charge with severe wounds. His interrogation report captured Japanese soldiers' growing realization that they faced an unbeatable enemy. "We charged with complete commitment, willing to die to achieve victory. The Marines did not run. They killed us systematically with machine guns, artillery, and naval gunfire. Those of us who reached their lines fought them hand to hand and discovered they were as fierce as any Japanese soldier. This destroyed our final illusion. We believed Americans relied on firepower because they feared close combat. The truth is they use firepower because they can, but they will fight with bayonets and fists if necessary. They have material superiority and warrior spirit. We have only warrior spirit. This is why we lose. The material superiority Yoshida referenced was overwhelming. Japanese soldiers on Saipan were on reduced rations by the second week of fighting. Marines received 3 hot meals daily, delivered to forward positions by supply teams operating under fire. Japanese wounded died from lack of medical care. Marine corpsmen treated casualties within minutes, and hospital ships offshore provided surgical care that saved lives at unprecedented rates. Japanese artillery rationed ammunition carefully. Marine artillery fired thousands of shells daily in support of every advance. The logistical advantage was decisive. Captain Yoshio Matsumoto, artillery forward observer on Iwo Jima, described watching marine logistics in operation. On the 4th day of battle, I observed American supply operations through my observation post. Trucks moved continuously from beach to forward positions delivering ammunition, food, water, medical supplies. Wounded were evacuated by the same vehicles returning empty. Tanks were refueled and rearmed within sight of our positions. The Marines fought as if they had access to unlimited resources because they did. We were rationing rifle ammunition. They were firing artillery barrages that consumed more shells in 1 hour than my entire battalion possessed. This was not warfare. This was industrial annihilation applied with systematic precision. The precision Matsumoto observed resulted from tactical innovations that Japanese forces struggled to counter. Marine rifle squads operated with independence that would have been impossible in rigidly hierarchical Japanese units. Every squad had radio communication with platoon leadership and fire support assets. When a squad encountered resistance, the sergeant could immediately call for mortar, artillery, or air support without waiting for orders from company or battalion command. This decentralized decision-making allowed Marines to exploit opportunities faster than Japanese commanders could react. By the time a Japanese captain recognized a weakness in his defensive line and issued orders to reinforce it, Marines had already identified and attacked the same weakness. The speed differential was decisive in fluid combat situations. Japanese defenders found themselves outflanked by enemies who had moved faster than orders could travel through traditional command structures. Lieutenant Shigeru Endo, who survived Peleliu before being killed on Okinawa, analyzed this tactical gap in letters to fellow officers. The Marines fight like a single organism with many minds. Each part makes independent decisions coordinated toward common objectives. We fight like a body controlled by one brain that must consciously direct every action. They adapt faster than we can respond. When we destroy one Marine unit, others are already moving to exploit the gaps our defensive fire creates. By the time our commander understands the situation and issues orders, the Marines have established positions we cannot dislodge without catastrophic casualties. We are fighting 20th century industrial warfare with 19th century command philosophy. We cannot win. Endo's assessment was shared by Japanese officers who survived long enough to understand why they were losing. But institutional resistance to changing doctrine meant most commanders continued tactics that had worked against Chinese forces, despite overwhelming evidence those tactics failed against Marines. The cost was measured in the total collapse of Japanese defensive positions across the Pacific. Every island fell. Every garrison was annihilated. Every delay purchased with blood only postponed inevitable defeat. The psychological impact on Japanese soldiers was devastating. Private Hideo Watanabe, the Iwo Jima defender, wrote in his final diary entry before dying on March 18. "We have fought for 27 days. Thousands of Americans have died taking this island. And still they attack with undiminished intensity. I have watched wounded Marines refuse evacuation to continue fighting. I have seen Marine officers shot multiple times direct assaults until they physically collapsed. These men are not the weak-willed soldiers we were promised. They are warriors equal to our best, equipped with weapons superior to ours, supported by logistics we cannot match. We were told our spiritual strength would overcome American materialism. But the Marines have spiritual strength equal to ours combined with material advantages we cannot counter. This is the truth our leaders hid from us. We cannot win. We never could win. And we die knowing we were sacrificed for a lie. Watanabe's bunker was destroyed by a satchel charge the next morning. The Marines who cleared it found 12 dead defenders and continued advancing. The pattern repeated thousands of times across Iwo Jima until organized resistance collapsed on March 26. The Marines who secured the island had suffered casualties that would have broken any other force, and were back in combat operations within weeks. This resilience was the factor Japanese planners never successfully countered. After the war ended, captured Japanese officers provided detailed analyses of what went wrong. The consensus was universal. Japan had underestimated Marines in every measurable category. Training, equipment, logistics, tactical flexibility, and most critically, the willingness to accept casualties that would have forced other armies to halt. General Kuribayashi's final assessment, smuggled to Tokyo before his death, summarized the situation with brutal clarity. The Marines represent the perfect integration of warrior culture and industrial power. They train soldiers willing to die for victory while providing those soldiers with every resource needed to achieve it. This combination is unbeatable. Japan possessed warrior culture but lacked industrial capacity. We could create men willing to die, but we could not give them the tools to win. America created men equally willing to die and gave them overwhelming material superiority. The outcome was never in doubt. We fought bravely and died honorably, but courage and honor cannot defeat courage, honor, and industrial supremacy combined. Today, the black sands of Iwo Jima are quiet. The island where 26,000 Marines fell and 21,000 Japanese died is now a memorial to both sides' sacrifice. Veterans who once tried to kill each other meet as old men to honor shared experiences that transcended nationality. Japanese survivors speak with respect bordering on awe about the Marines they faced. American veterans acknowledge the courage of enemies who fought knowing defeat was certain. Both recognize that individual bravery meant little against the mathematical realities of industrial warfare. The Marines were the cutting edge of American power in the Pacific. They paid a terrible price with casualty rates that would have destroyed less resilient organizations. But they never failed to take an objective, never abandoned a position, never gave enemies reason to believe Marines could be stopped through superior tactics or fighting spirit. They embodied what Japanese propaganda had claimed the Imperial Japanese Army represented. Warriors willing to die, backed by a nation willing to provide everything needed for victory. That combination proved unstoppable. Private Takeshi Nakamura's diary, recovered from his body on Peleliu, concluded with words that captured what thousands of Japanese soldiers learned too late. The Marines are not devils. They are men like us, afraid of death but more afraid of dishonor. They fight for their brothers, as we fight for ours. The difference is not courage or skill. The difference is that their nation gives them the tools to make their courage decisive. We were given courage and told it would be enough. It was never enough. This is the lie that killed us.